Vishal Vijay Nimbalkar, and today's date is 20 July 2021, and today's topic is exceptions in Java. So first let's see what is an exception. An exception is an unwanted or unexpected event which occurs during the execution of a program that is at a runtime that disrupts the normal flow of the program instruction. Then let's see error versus exception. First, error means an error indicates the serious problem that a reasonable application should not try to catch, and exception means exception indicates conditions that reasonable applications might try to catch. Let's see exception hierarchy. All exceptions and errors types are subclasses of class throwable, which is a base class of a hierarchy, and one branch is headed by exception. This class is used for exceptional conditions that user program should catch, and null pointer exception is an example of such an exception. Another branch error are used by the Java runtime system, mean JVM, to indicate error having to do with runtime environment itself, that is JRE. Then stack overflow error is an example of such an error. And then let's see default exception handling. Whenever inside a method, if an exception has occurred, the method creates an object known as a exception object and hands it off to the runtime system, that is a JVM, and the exception object contains name and description of the exception and current state of the program where exception has occurred. Creating the exception object and handling it to the runtime system is called throwing and exception. There might be the list of the methods that had been called to get to the method where exception was occurred, and this ordered list of the method is called call stack. Then the procedure will happen. The runtime system searches the call stack to find the method that contains a block of code that can handle the occurred exception. The block of the code is called exception handler, and the runtime system starts searching from the method in which exception occurred and proceed through call stack in the reverse order in which method were called. Then next is if it find appropriate handler, then it passes the occurred exception to it, and appropriate handler means the type of the exception object thrown matches the type of the exception object it can handle. Then if runtime system searches all the methods on call stack and could not have found the appropriate handler, then runtime system hand over the exception object to default exception handler, which is the part of runtime system, and this handler print the exception information in the following format and terminates the program abnormally. Then let's see customized exception handling. Customized exception handling means Java exception handling is managed via 5 keywords: try, catch, throw, throws, and finally. Then program statements that we think can raise the exceptions are contained within a try block, and if an exception occurs within the try block and it is thrown, our code can catch this exception using catch block and handle it in some rational manner, and system generated exception are automatically thrown by the Java runtime system. So to manually throw an exception, use the keyword throw, and exception that is thrown out of a method must be specified as such a throws clause. Any code that absolutely must be executed after a try block completes it put in a final block. Then in a method there can be more than one statements that might throw an exception, so put all these statements within its own try block and provide a separate exception handler within own catch block of each of them. Then if an exception occurs within the try block, that exception is handled by the exception handler associated with it, and to associate exception handler we must put catch block after it. There can be more than one exception handler. Each catch block is an exception handler that handles the exception of the type indicated by its argument, and the argument exception type declare the type of the exception that it can handle. The must be the name of the class that inherits from throwable class. For each try block there can be 0 or more catch block, but only one finally block. The final block is optional, so it always gets executed whether an exception occurred in a try block or not. If exception occurs, then it will be executed after try and catch block, and if exception does not occur, then it will be executed after the try block. The final block in Java is used to put important code such as cleanup code, example closing the file or closing the connection. Then exception handling in a Java is one of the powerful mechanism to handle the runtime errors, so that normal flow of the application can be maintained. Then exception basically exception is an abnormal condition, and in Java an exception is an event that disrupts the normal flow of the program, and it is an object which is thrown at a runtime. Then exception handling is an mechanism to handle the runtime errors such as class not found exception, IO exception, SQL exception, and remote exception, etc. Then let's see advantages of exception handling. The core advantages of exception handling is to maintain the normal flow of the application, and an exception normally disrupts the normal flow of the application. That is why we can use exception handling. Then let's see hierarchy of Java exception classes. The java.language.throwable class is the root class of a Java exception, and hierarchy which is inherited by two subclasses, exception and error. Hierarchy of Java exception classes. Let's see discuss the types of Java exceptions. There are mainly two types of exceptions, checked and unchecked exception. Here an error is considered as an unchecked exception. According to Oracle, there are three types of exception. First is a checked exception, unchecked exception, and error. Let's see difference between checked exception and unchecked exception. Let's see first checked exception. And checked exception means the classes which directly inherit throwable class except runtime exception and error are known as a checked exception. Let's say example IO exception, then SQL exception, etc. Then checked exceptions are checked at a compile time, and then let's see next exception is unchecked exception. And unchecked exception means the classes which inherit runtime exceptions are known as unchecked exceptions. And example are arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, then array index out of bound exception, etc. Unchecked exceptions are not checked at a compile time, but they are checked at a runtime. And third one is error, and error is irrecoverable, example out of memory error, virtual machine error, and assertion error, etc. Then there are 5 keywords which are used in handling exception in Java. First is try, and the try keyword is used to specify a block where we should place exception code, and the try block must be followed by either catch or finally. Then it means we can't use try block alone. Then let's see catch block, catch keyword. The catch block is used to handle the exception. It must be preceded by try block, which means we can't use catch block alone, and it can be followed by finally block later. Then let's see finally block, and final block is used to execute the important code of the program, and it executed whether an exception is handled or not. Then throw means throw keyword is used to throw an exception and throws keyword is used to declare the exception, and it doesn't throw an exception. It specifies that there may occurs an exception in the method, and it is always used with method signature. Thank you.